weird messages from Jay in the background of like, yeah, I mean, it's not like I wouldn't notice. I'm facing you. Well, everybody, welcome to the Grimdark Media. This is episodes 3 and 4 of our Fallout watch-along series that we're doing, where Jay and I, who are classic Fallout players,
by classic, you mean old, right?
I mean old. I mean vintage. Yeah, it's vintage is cool again.
This is the best isometric top down. Wait a minute, what are we talking about?
It's funny when you look at what Shady Sands is in Fallout 1 to what Shady Sands becomes. But anyway, we are doing this 2 episodes at a time, recapping the series. Jay was watching it 2 episodes at a time, and then Christine was just like, but just one more.
She just broke the dam.
Just one more. So we're still going to hold to the format, though, but we do know a little bit more about what happens, so we might our like speculation will obviously change. If you haven't seen the episodes, they're all on Prime, they're all launched, you can go watch them. But as we are big Fallout fans, we thought this would be a fun thing for Grimdark Media, and this is appropriately grimdark.
Yeah, it's the series vacillates, as do the games, as do the scenes in the games.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's this has a fair bit of darker stuff than
there's especially in these in episode 4, which we'll get to. There's a wonderful apotheosis of one of the characters that gets very dark.
Yeah.
Where they realize the world they're living in is not the world they're from.
No.
So the way we're now recording these obviously is going to be slightly different. This is us testing out new formats. This is actually going to be live with our patrons, which means that at the end of this, we're going to take like a little 5-minute like Q&A commentary from the patrons and answer some questions as we go along. And when you guys watch this in the future on YouTube, I'll probably post them as premieres, that there could be a chat alongside it. But they're just like little half-hour recap episodes where we go through media that we like and we just watched. So yeah, we'll do Fallout, then we'll do Rebel Moon Part 2, Electric Boogaloo.
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
You're not doing Rebel Moon with me? All right, fair enough. I'll go it alone for that one.
I thought we were friends.
I'll go it alone for that one. I don't know, man. I liked one of his movies, and I liked the intro to another one.
I've liked multiples of his movies, but it's like, this feels like a kid who needs to take his ADHD medication, just throwing at, like, it would be like if I took everything in my basement and threw it at a wall to see what stuck.
It's a kid that has one container for all of his toys. So the G.I. Joes are fighting the Transformers, or fighting the Warhammer guys, or fighting. That's what that was. Anyway, this isn't Rebel Moon cast, so we're going to dive back into Fallout. We could just easily go off on this.
Which is one thing certainly not inspired by or derived by other things.
No, absolutely not. So this is, I have to pull up not looking at American Gothic anymore, because we were all talking about American Gothic before this happened.
Which is awesome.
It is an awesome show. And also weirdly links to Zack Snyder through Dawn of the Dead. So Fallout episode 3 is the one we're going to start off by recapping, and this is called The Head.
The Head. And
the Head is basically picking up where we left off with Lucy having just cut off the head of the mysterious stranger.
So if I could tell you, and I might have mentioned this in the previous episode, I don't even remember. One of my favorite things about the miniatures MODIPHIUS was bringing out, that hopefully are out soon.
They came out at Salute, like limited.
For the TV show, is that because the miniatures got previewed before the show came out, you know how it is, like everybody's like looking at like Lego sets or toys or whatever to figure things out. And when people were looking at the miniatures, like Lucy has this huge bag with her, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, what's in the bag?" Like maybe the MacGuffin in the show is like the Garden of Eden creation kit.
Something like
maybe
that.
she's looking for the water chip. Like maybe she's doing all these things. Nah, it's just a head.
It's just a dude's head.
It's just a dude's head.
It's just absolutely a dude's head. So we are going to be, I guess, following the 3 characters as they've kind of split up again, right? Because Lucy's on her own. She's got the head. She knows she has to deliver it to this enigmatic figure that she's always chasing that's kidnapped her father. And Maximus is currently squiring for a new knight named Titus. And my favorite, I think, part of this 3-part story is the bit where we get to learn more about the Brotherhood of the Steel Knights.
And this is also the episode where I'm going to say you start to get to the point where you have, from an exposition point of view, a 4th main character. Mm-hmm. Because this is the episode where Lucy's brother really starts to poke and prod at things.
Yeah, he does. He starts to really question the reality of what's going on in Vault 32.
So he actually becomes your main kind of like third-party perspective for delivering exposition about what's going on in the world. The 3 main characters are experiencing it, but he's the one literally talking down to the camera lens.
Yeah, and I love this writing-wise because he is doing it in the present while Cooper is exposing it to us in the past.
Yeah.
Right, so from a writing device point of view, this is where that train kind of starts, and it'll continue all the way through. So, but back to Maximus and Titus. We realize very quickly that this knight is a complete dick. He is not cool at all. He does not like his squire. He does not even apparently like being a knight.
I'm pretty sure he's every Brotherhood of Steel knight in all the Fallout games, with the possible exception of Paladin Dance.
I was gonna say in Fallout 3 though,
maybe
all the Sarah Lyons and like all of the like DC Brotherhood are pretty cool. They're all pretty like noble and they're like, hail there, brother, blah blah blah. But like these feel more like the Brotherhood in Fallout 1, where you're kind of interacting with them and they're very standoffish. And at the beginning, they're just like, get out of here, Baltimore. We don't care about you. Whatever. You just go hide in your hole. Like, they're not cool.
No.
And this comes to a head very quickly. Like, very quickly. Like, he has obviously had his, like, his moment where he's having to, like, try and repair the armor. And the armor set isn't, like, working because of the damage that's happened in the fight with the ghoul. Right. Yeah. So the fight with the ghoul, basically, this thing gets like cut. He's crashed. He's having to like lift the armor up. And he's now impersonating this guy as a complete dick who gets eaten by a Yao guy. And he's accosted by these like goons. And the goons are some of my favorite because they're just, one of them looks like Nathan Jones. Like there's like the biggest goon, but then the one that's in charge is clearly like the croniest little goon.
So is this our new thing? So every end of the world has to have a Malcolm McDowell. Does every post-apocalypse have to have a Nathan Jones?
Yeah, it has to have a Nathan Jones.
Cool.
Yeah,
I'm down with that.
I'm fine with that.
down.
Yeah, it has to have a Rictus Erectus. He gets in a fight with them, and then the fight gets ended like my favorite way, which is just when he uses the arm of the power armor suit to crush that guy's head. He just grapefruits this guy's head to death. But eventually he gets his power armor working again, and he starts like a long trudge after Lucy. Lucy, what did you think about the monster effect in this? Because I would say the entire budget of this episode goes into the monster effect where she loses the head. And I love this whole scene, but it was very Resident Evil Village.
Yeah.
Where Village, where you're fighting the giant fish.
So it was interesting because one of the things I tried to do as I was watching it, before I was watching it, was to completely avoid spoilers.
Sure.
Like, I was very interested in the behind the scenes stuff,
this
like the actors talking about actors,
yeah.
But I was trying to avoid that. And when they when Lucy and the ghouls first start walking by the lake, and you can tell something's moving around in there, my wife, because she knows I've played all the games and I'm super into it, she's like, well, what do you think's gonna come out of the lake? And not realizing that it was one of the scenes that had been previewed earlier, my first thought was it was gonna be a Mirelurk.
I thought it was gonna be something like that too, yeah. But
so what was cool about that for me is when the Gulper emerges, I was genuinely surprised.
They went with old school monsters because the Mirelurk is a newer monster from the East Coast, right? I don't think there are Mirelurks in 1 and 2. I think it's like geckos, and it's the Gulpers and Yaoguai are all in like the California apocalypse.
And especially where the series is going to end, leaning into, you know, more of that, like the geckos and stuff.
Yeah, the Nevada stuff as they get to more like the Sierra Nevada.
But so when the Gulper first came out, I did get those same kind of Resident Evil vibes. The build up to that, where the ghoul is giving her the huge dialogue about torture, and it's funny because again, my wife and I start.
Well, that's after though. So she gets accosted by it. Then Walt shows up as she's like trying to get it back, and she realizes she can't. Then,
you mean after? Sorry,
Then Walton Goggins catches up to her. The ghoul catches up to her because he's revived Dog Meat, which is the dog that the
CX-404.
CX-404. And has used it to track the head because he knows what it smells like, and then arrives basically as she's lost it to this Gulper. And she thinks he's torturing her by like dipping her in the water, and he's actually just using her as bait to try and get the Gulper to come back out. And it's amazing because we keep flipping between Walt Goggins in the past, Cooper in the past, and the present. In the past, he's just this like likable.
He's a pretty moral guy.
Like, and kind of like in decline actor, but like he has like a lot of questions about the government and who his wife works for and stuff like that. But now he's just this like embittered like bounty hunter, basically.
Well, it's funny because you see him go through 2 different character development arcs, and we'll touch more on his ghoul character arc when we get to episode 4. But even flashing back to that, he starts off as a very stereotypical 50s Americana. Like, he hates the commies, he hates the Reds, all that sort of thing. And then when he starts asking questions,
poking at questions,
like his
and that's where the parallel between him and the brother come in. Right?
Exactly, but that's where his views start to very organically and slowly change, which is amazing because we talked about this off camera. But what makes a lot of this stuff work is the pacing.
Yeah,
is they don't rush to get to, oh, well, now he's a different character than he was like 10 minutes ago.
Exactly, and you see it almost from the very beginning where you see the like, do I have to shoot him? That's like to me, that's the moment of like in the very first episode where he's like, do I have to shoot him? And we have this like beginning of him questioning is it right or wrong to just one man basically make all the decisions and affect everybody else around them. And so eventually they do manage to find and kill this Gulper and get back the head. It is a shocking scene where a Gulper is basically pulled inside out, which I think was
which is Maximus and Thaddeus.
And Thaddeus show up. And
which is, oh my God. Yeah, like for something that is completely CG and fake and not real, the scene where they pull the Gulper's stomach out, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, because Coop and Lucy give up and then get the other two.
No. They don't give up.
Sorry.
They go on a side quest.
They go on a side quest.
It's Fallout.
Right. It's Fallout.
They go on a side quest.
That's right. Yeah. They go on a side quest. And then Thaddeus, who is the new sort of like squire that gets deployed after the power armor gets fixed, and he's now impersonating Titus. It gets like half eaten by this friggin' thing, this Gulper, and pulled out. And as he's being pulled out, it's literally pulling the insides of the Gulper out with
So
it.
I expected the gore scene here because I didn't think we were going to need Thaddeus for the rest of the story. I thought it was going to be he was going to end up with the top half of Thaddeus.
Yeah.
So I was all like keyed up.
I was expecting it too,
for something graphic and horrible to happen, and then something different graphic.
But the Gulper has like human fingers all through it. Like it's such a cool, weird design where like maybe it was human at one point.
And also, in case I didn't mention it before.
Yeah, exactly. And so now Maximus and Thaddeus are basically in possession of this head because they catch up to it and they're the ones eventually that basically deal with this giant weird monster. And so on this side quest now, we have the ghouls like sort of like moment of, I guess, trauma or worry.
So during the fight with the Gulper, the ghoul's medicine,
he falls on his like satchel. Yeah,
I think she used it as a club.
Oh, that's right. She's wailing at him with it.
And because it's in like a glass thing, like a jet tube.
Like a jet tube, yeah.
It just smashes all of it. And this is his thing to keep him from becoming a feral ghoul.
We think. We don't know what it's for right now. It'll be revealed in the next episode, basically, that...
But he needs this.
He doesn't
want this. He needs this.
Yeah, he needs this. Because he starts coughing at the end of this episode. Yeah. We see him start to kind of like get like a weird hacking cough. Like he's like getting sick all of a sudden. And what I was reminded of instantly was the fact that when he was buried, he had these like drip bags going into the ground with him. Yeah. He was clearly on some kind of drug, like intravenously, while he was buried to keep him alive. And you don't really get any context for that when he first gets dug up by the raiders. But now it makes sense where you're like, oh, whatever was basically dripping into him, that was like super important and required basically for him to stay alive with no food underground for 60 years with like pieces of getting cut off. And that's the last kind of bit of like exposition we get in this is the spokesperson recruitment of Cooper, where Cooper is like, he's now being looked at for Vault Tech to become their guy. He's Vault Boy. He's Vault Boy. And the thumb thing becomes like a real thing. And we see him walk into this room full of like Vault Tech execs who are all super cheery, like not like good cheery though, like David Lynch cheery. Like it's not.
It's very Stepford Wives. Like the way all the Vault Tech people are portrayed.
Yeah, and he's handed this new outfit basically because he was gonna go in his like cowboy outfit, but they hand this new outfit and it's the prototype Vault suit.
Yeah,
it's like the first generation of Vault suits, and he's asking questions: does it block radiation? Does it do that? And they're like, yeah, sure, yeah, it does all these things, and like. The weird sort of like fixed grins on all these
whatever people. Guy.
Sure, guy. Yeah.
Relax. Put your feet up.
It's going to be great.
Yeah.
And it cuts to the end of just like the sounds of the camera snatching. His wife is standing there with all these other execs because she works for Vault Tech. And he's just he is Vault Tech personified because he is Vault Boy. He is the guy who is the sort of like the poster child for the Vault system.
So just to go back in time a little bit in this episode, there was two things I kind of wanted to call out. One of them is not crucial to the ongoing narrative, but one of them is like that. This show is so full of Easter eggs, right? Like if you played the game, if you haven't played the games, the show is very open and inviting. But if you have, it's full of Easter eggs. And one of them, so when they go back to Vault 33, is the damage to the water chip.
Yep.
Right? Because that's going to be an issue. The water chip isn't working. But the one that's more narratively important, because it'll set off that sort of fourth or third and a half main character thing, is as they're getting ready to have their elections for the next overseer, the big debate going on openly and privately among some of the characters is what they're going to do with the raiders. They have all these raiders as prisoners.
Yeah, and that's our fourth main character's kind of arc here is we have the through line basically of him one, having to have a new job because he can't be trusted because he helped let Lucy out. So
Yep.
and they're like,
that's Chet. Yeah.
That's Chet, where they're like, oh yeah, well I guess how do you punish a guy who hates every job that he's ever had, who hates every job in here? How do you make him suffer? And it's like they make him take care of the Raiders, basically. They put him in charge of like feeding the Raiders. So it's funny because then that's like him interacting with the Raiders feels like that's where he starts to like, that's like the thing that kind of puts the tickle in his brain of like something's not right in Vault 33.
Yeah. And I got to say, as an aside to the aside, poor Chet, man.
What's wrong with Chet?
Poor Chet. Like, yeah, that guy just gets the worst.
He's call to action.
No, Chet's not the brother.
Oh, he's the cousin.
Chet's the cousin.
That's right. Yeah, sorry.
Like
also gets punched. He was the door warden. Yeah.
And it just like that poor guy, like that guy gets the most real world 21st century version of the short stick at every turn.
Him and his cousin stuff. So yeah, the cousin stuff
Chet,
comes up later.
Poor bastard.
Just cousin stuff. So then the like development of him starting to like probe comes to a head kind of in episode 4. So jumping in episode 4, and then we'll do our recap of like what we thought about these 2 episodes. Yep. So this is where we start to really see Cooper start to suffer, and Cooper and Lucy are now parallel. So their stories are parallel, and then Thaddeus and
the episode title for episode 4 is Ghouls.
Is Ghouls. That's right.
So I mean, this lets you know what we're going to get into.
That's here. Right. Yeah. So and we'll kind of recap the 2 through lines separately, although they weave back and forth during the episode. So like with Lucy and Cooper, he is still being a complete prick to her in this episode.
Oh, he's got her on a leash.
He's drinking, he's got her on a leash. He's drinking all the water and then making her like drink like the filthy irradiated water.
Yeah, he's cool. And he's making her drink the irradiated water while he drinks the good water.
Yeah, he drinks all the purified water. It's like literally the radioactive water is better for you. Like in Fallout terms, that heals you faster because you want the radiation. Like what are you doing?
And I gotta say, it's minor, it's subtle, it's not too subtle, but it's a transformative moment. The moment where you see her staring at the filthy irradiated water. That's the moment where kind of the last, like she's been swallowed by the gulper. She's been tortured by this guy. Like all these bad things have happened. Yeah. But when you see her looking at the filthy irradiated water and you see the look on her face, you know, this is literally the switch is flipped. Yeah. And this is where she starts acting like the player character version of a Fallout protagonist in an actual video game where it's like, I'm making a decision. It's a bad decision, but it's a decision I have to make.
That's it. She's no longer following her programming at that point. Yeah. She's been beaten down enough by this like topside world. You kind of start to see it during the fight in town. Yeah. Where like she's still trying to act with like all of the like protocols and rules that she has. But by the end, she's just like running. In this moment, I think you're right. You start to see the transformation into this, like, now she's a survivor. You know what I mean? Now she's a survivor.
And as soon as she takes the water, Cooper's like, yeah, now you're getting it.
Yeah.
And it's literally, yeah, now she's getting it.
Yeah. And it's funny because there's a bit of like Black Snake moan in this moment. Like this isn't Christina Ricci chained to a radiator, but this is very much the way that like, there's a you got to dry out from being a vault dweller thing coming off of Cooper, where his assholeness starts to become like more proactively like trying to teach her something.
Yeah. And this is, again, as I mentioned right before we started recording, this to me is kind of the fulcrum for their character arcs in the story, because up until this point, he's just a dick.
Yep.
Like, even though he's got this sympathetic opening scene to the entire series, he's just a dick.
Yeah.
And she is this unrepentantly good, morally uncompromised person.
Like optimistic person.
Optimistic. And this is the point where it's, again, the pacing on this is great. It's not like a switch flips and all of a sudden he's the good guy and she's the bad guy. But it's like she starts to realize she's going to have to compromise to survive. Yeah. And you start to understand that he's every sympathetic Batman villain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's like if
you get his origin story, then you can get where he's coming from.
Yeah, exactly. He's a Mr. Freeze, right? Like trying to save his wife. Like he's got that kind of like sympathetic backstory.
Literally,
Mr. Freeze. Oh, except he didn't get frozen. So,
I meant just trying to save his
wife. So we're at this moment now where like they hear some noises, and we go into this house, and we hear someone saying "Roger, I'm Roger" over and over again, and they encounter another ghoul, and you start to see this other ghoul making noises, kind of like what Cooper's trying to make, and this is the moment where you start to figure out like, oh, whatever the medicine this guy was on, this is what he needed to not turn into something.
Yeah.
Because this guy's slowly going feral. And there's this great scene and interaction between him, Lucy, and Roger, this ghoul, where you clearly realize Roger and Cooper know each other.
Yep.
Like there's some kind of like,
and they're friendly. Like they're not necessarily friends, but they're friendly.
Yeah, exactly. And as you can see Roger like slipping away, he's like asking, do you have any? I just need a little hit, whatever. And Cooper's like, no, I'm sorry, man, I can't help you out. And he's like, but I can do this for you. And he just shoots him in the head. And it's funny how I think the sound design in this episode is really good, because the shockingness of that sudden death really lands. And you see it on Lucy's face too, because she's not expecting it from the interaction.
It's jarring, because even objectively as someone watching a television show, you might be expecting this is where this is going.
Yeah.
But it's delivered in a way that is shockingly sudden without being done for shock value. It's really effective.
And then the fallout of that scene is, one, Cooper trying to loot him for medicine, doesn't find any, and then just starting to eat him.
Yes.
And that's like,
ass jerky don't make itself.
And then he's like, well,
why am I doing all the work?
Why am I doing all the work? And he makes Lucy cut all this jerky off of the ghoul. And it is a friggin' shocking moment. Like, cannibalism was not what I was expecting in this moment at all. I just wanted to go for the drugs, but cutting ass jerky off of Roger was a moment where I was just like, what in the fuck is happening?
The worst part of it for me was when the whole scene's over and they're walking away, and you get the close-up of the backpack with just strips of
ass jerky.
Ghoul meat.
I was like, why the ghoul, though? Like, there's so many things you could have eaten, like all kinds of other things, but you just chose to eat the ghoul. Interesting. And then that leads us to probably what I would feel is the most side questy moment so far in the series, which is Super Duper Marts. And this is where like you're not
playing Fallout until you've gone to the Super Duper.
No, and Walton basically collapses. He's getting more and more sick.
After he hands her over.
To this like hospital basically, and he's getting more and more sick, and he collapses outside. And she goes into the hospital kind of optimistically, thinking like everything's going to be okay. Like she doesn't like she's being handed over.
So she thinks she's being handed over because she tells Snip
that's right,
that she thinks she's being handed over to be a sex slave.
That's right, to be a sex slave. But at least she's gotten away from the ghoul.
Yeah.
And we meet our first Mr. Handy Robot, which I thought was fantastic. I couldn't believe we hadn't met Mr. Handy Robot until this point.
Yeah, he looked great.
He looked great, and he was practical. Like that's the thing, is a practical effect. Like I loved that he was a practical effect.
He looked great. The voice delivery was perfect.
Because it was the same actor.
It's the same actor, but it's not just that. It's that overly cheery Mr. Handy. Hello. Yeah. Oh, that sounds terrible. Like,
and that's where she starts to get reassured that maybe everything's going to be okay, because he's like checking her out, making sure she's injured or not. He
gives her a new finger.
We forgot about the finger scene. That's right. Sorry, they get in a fight. And this is probably actually the best scene of this entire episode, where she basically bites off his finger.
She bites off the ghoul's finger.
That's right.
In the fight. And then he returns the favor by taking his knife and cutting off her finger. And it is a tremendous scene. And then he says, this might be the first honest conversation we've ever had. And she finally snaps basically. And the thing I love is we come back to her in this episode. We come back to him much closer to the end. Yeah. But you get a payoff for both of those finger severings. Yeah, it's not just chopping off a hand in Star Wars where everybody gets a hand chopped off.
Yeah. So as we end up basically getting like a drawer full of fingers that one of these gets reattached, and it's not even the same color. It's like slightly blue. Yeah. It's so funny because for the rest of the show, she just has this weird blue ring finger. It's amazing. And it's the most Fallout-y thing that like you can just kind of heal anything.
This is where she's having the conversation with Mr. Handy as he's reattaching the finger.
And he's getting more cheery.
And he's very cheery. And so he sounds like a fellow Vault Dweller, right? Like he sounds like home to her.
Yep.
And so she's like, oh my God, all these horrible things have happened. And then she says, I thought he was bringing me here to be a sex slave. Mm-hmm. And Snip quite cheerily tells her, no. You're just here so we can harvest your organs.
Harvest all your organs. That's right. Yeah. And she's like, what? And then she's in the chair all of a sudden and has to fight this Mr. Handy.
He tranks her, basically.
Yeah, he tranks her. But she has to get away from this Mr. Handy. And then she kills everybody else in the hospital, basically.
Accidentally.
Yep. Not on purpose.
Accidentally.
But kills everybody else in this hospital, which is pretty great.
So, and this is a learning moment about this stuff, because she basically gets the upper hand on the two stoners who run the hospital. Yeah. Never mind. But the two stoners who run the hospital.
The two lock, stock, and two smoking barrel stoners.
You got it.
That's what I got out of that.
She basically threatens to kill them if they don't let all their prisoners go. Yeah. And they let half their prisoners go. And their prisoners run away. And then she's like, no, you got to let all of them go. And the other half are very clearly ghouls.
Yep.
And these stoners try to explain to her, oh, well, no, you don't want to let them out. That's not the same thing.
They're not prisoners.
And she basically is going to kill them if they don't do it. So they let the ghouls out, and then it goes all Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, it goes very Dawn of the Dead for a few minutes. Yeah. And it's a very like Fallout Quest solution where you've chosen the good karma path basically for this thing, and then everybody dies.
Yep.
Good karma is not necessarily going to help the world.
I'm going to do the right thing.
Oh dear.
That's why they call me the soul survivor.
We have this incredible like apotheosis moment though, where she walks out of the hospital, or the super duper at the end of this whole thing, and she's like got some of the chems. She's now wearing the like classic Paul Bonner art Vault Dweller armor, where she's
got the vault suit, pad. But yeah, she's got the leather.
It's all tied down,
strap with the 10mm in it, and all that stuff.
Yeah, and she's this is like the dividing line between Lucy the Vault Dweller and Lucy the like survivor.
Yeah.
Right. So now she's like in full on survivor mode, and she drops the chems off next to Coop, who is like rasping on the ground, basically half dead, and that's their like kind of final scene together for a minute, because she decides to save him even though she probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
And then now we have our Titus, and why don't you cover Titus and Thaddeus and their little like side quest, because this is happening parallel to Titus and Thaddeus, and then in our next episodes they're gonna switch who comes together.
Yeah. So the pairs and the partnerships keep changing, and they keep changing throughout the series. So Titus and Thaddeus are they're sitting around a campfire. They are stoked. Now, Thaddeus still doesn't know that Maximus is pretending to be Titus, because he's never raised the visor. He's never seen him outside of the armor. And
Maximus is letting his guard down a little bit.
Yeah. So what's happening is they're stoked. They're basically partying because they got the head back. Yep. They overcame the gulper. And like they're having this like super college athlete bro moment where Thaddeus is like, you got to brand me. 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 So
I got to belong to you. Like, it was so weird. And like he's confessing a bunch of stuff to Maximus.
So he confesses that he feels bad about Maximus having died, because he thinks Maximus has died at this point. Because the only reason he bullied Maximus is he used to be the one who got bullied. And he realized, well, no, if I could bully someone else, then I'll be fine. And then he even says to him, you know, I wish that eventually he would have gotten the chance to bully someone else, which is hilarious, because it's like, it's this genuine, heartfelt.
Yeah, he's being honest.
He's my brother. I wanted him to, but his version of that is, I just wanted him to become the bully.
The next bully. Yeah. He's like, I wish he would have leveled up and gotten to bully someone the way I bullied him. It's like, it's so great, because it's so, like you said, it's so heartfelt, but at the same time, it's so mired in how fucked up this world is.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And how like steeped in violence, that would be like something you'd aspire someone to have.
It's interesting too, because the whole, again, the Brotherhood of Steel is depicted the way the Brotherhood of Steel is depicted in most of the Fallout games.
Early especially.
And this should show you just how broken that mentality and that approach is, right? Like, we all think the Brotherhood of Steel are wicked cool the first time we see the power armor, and then it's like, oh, there's a cost associated with this.
There's definitely cost associated with this. It's that whole thing of like Space Marines are cool until you realize how they're made. You know what I mean? They're all kidnapped children.
So, and I forget now if it's that night or it's the next morning. So they're having another conversation. I think it's the next morning.
It's after he gets branded.
It's after he gets branded. Oh yeah, he's branded.
He does the branding. He does the heart to heart, and then Maximus decides, I'm gonna actually come clean.
So the visor comes up. He tells him. Thaddeus immediately flips out.
Just loses his mind.
Like immediately flips out. Thaddeus. It's funny because Thaddeus in that moment almost just turns into who Titus was right before Titus died. Right. Yeah. They're going to kill you for this. You can't do this. My favorite part of it is the realization, I can't believe I let you brand me.
That's so good. Can't let you brand me, man. What the fuck?
So they have a fight.
He gets his foot stepped on by power,
which is going to be important later.
Very important later. So, and very graphic.
So during the fight, Maximus...
It's not much of a fight, because Maximus is actively trying not to kill him in the power armor.
Right. So he stomps his foot to try to keep him from getting away. And then Thaddeus... goes between his legs, because the power armor is really tall, and pulls the fusion core out of his back.
And he's stuck.
And he's stuck. He's stuck in the suit. And now Thaddeus has the fusion core, the head, and he starts limping his way to freedom.
Fucks off to freedom with the head, because he knows if he's turned into Titus. If he can return the head,
he's turned into Maximus.
Maximus, right? Because he'll become a knight. Yeah. So, and that's the whole sort of like flip all of a sudden is we see that, like, I think this scene's really important because we see that all of them are opportunists. Like, that even the Brotherhood people, like Titus on down, they're all shitty people.
The other
inside
thing
this organization
I find interesting is, again, when you're talking about the three main characters, right? So we've had the moment in this episode where, like I said, looking at the series as a whole, you recognize this episode as a bit of a fulcrum for the Ghoul and Lucy's character development.
Yeah.
Maximus's character development isn't as much of a single curved line because it's kind of up and down. Because Maximus, it's funny because he starts off as the character I feel by far the least sympathetic for, and I very quickly become the most sympathetic for him because every single time he thinks something is about to get better, he thinks he can be honest, he thinks he can show somebody what's really going on, he gets screwed every single time. So he's been lying this whole time. Don't get me wrong. But at the moment where he decides, you know what, Thaddeus isn't as bad as I thought, I'm going to open up to Thaddeus, I'm going to tell him what it is, it immediately goes south on him.
I'm a knight. I've got this knight to look up to now. This guy's a shitbag. Like, every institution that he's supposed to look up to keeps letting him down.
Yeah.
He has real, like, Kylo Ren energy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, his arc is very much like, he wants to be a good person. He wants to do the right thing. But every time he, like, attaches to somebody, they disappoint him. They fuck him over.
And I'm not going to skip ahead, but we're going to see more ups and downs with this with him. So like I said, with the Ghoul and Lucy, you have kind of a more linear arc. Like, they're moving in one direction and they're moving in another. And that's kind of the way it goes. But with Maximus, man, it's peaks and valleys.
Yep, absolutely.
And it just makes you feel terrible for him as a character.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think that seeing that happen over and over for him will explain why he later on attaches to another of the main characters so much.
And it's funny because he's the actor I knew the least about going into this. He's a blank slate to me. And it's as you look at these things happening, you realize, holy crap, this guy is a much better actor than I think he is.
Oh yeah, he's tremendous. His struggle is tremendous. Absolutely. I actually think that his he never
oversells it. Like, it's very real.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Walton Goggins, but he's just playing Boyd Crowder in this.
Yeah.
Like, he's just playing.
He's Boyd Crowder, the man with no name.
He's Boyd Crowder in the future, and he's what's his name? He's Harlan. What's his name? Harlan Gibbons in the past. Like, he's both characters basically.
I thought you were going to say he's also Shane Vandrell from The Shield.
No.
Because he is also Shane Vandrell from The Shield.
The only character he doesn't play in this one so far is one from Sons of Anarchy. So in this one, like, I think we leave off. Titus is trapped in his power armor. Lucy has basically gone her way, and Cooper's gone. And Cooper is recovering, but, like, kind of gone his way too.
Yeah.
And that's where we leave episodes 3 and 4. So what did you think of these two episodes? What's your overall impression of this? Having, like, we've had setup in 1 and 2. This is the like now almost midway point. It is the midway point between the series. How'd you feel about these two in particular?
Well, I loved both of them. Of the two of them, it's funny because they both delivered in very different ways.
Yeah.
I found episode 3, I really enjoyed all the action and all the visuals. Like, it was the high points of the episodes. Not that those things were underwhelming in episode 4, but, like, the Gulper, the fight, the confrontations between Lucy and the Ghoul.
Yeah.
Just the way the scene in front of the irradiated water is shot, all of that stuff was brilliant. Episode 4, for me so far, I'm not going to say it had the most Easter eggs because, man, this show is riddled with Easter eggs.
Just everywhere. Yeah.
But it had the most you're a Fallout fan payoff moments. Like, they go to the Super Duper Mart.
Yeah.
There's the Mr. Handy. The interaction between Thaddeus and, like, using the fusion core to make the power armor a useless piece of crap, basically. So, again, I love both of them for different reasons, not completely different reasons. And the thing that I can't underscore enough is the pacing on this show is brilliant. Like, the fact that all of these character changes and shifts feel very organic. Like, your one criticism with one of your criticisms with that Rebel Moon nonsense was the fact that you're supposed to feel a certain way about a character because you've been told that. There's none of that in this, right? Like, it's all things happen. The characters react in a way that within the context of their world, you could believe a normal person.
And they change in a believable way too.
And they change as they acquire new information and circumstances change with them. So, and again, I know we're only talking about these 2 episodes, but having gone all the way to the end of the first season, I can tell you that my opinion about the pacing isn't going to change. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, it's show don't tell for all the transformational stuff. So I agree with you. I think so far these are the 2 best episodes I've seen of anything of writers translating the experience of a video game to a story.
Yeah.
So if you think about, if I was going to compare this to something else, think about the difference between this, end-wise, and The Last of Us, the HBO series. In The Last of Us, they remove all the gameplay elements. You're basically watching all the cutscenes from The Last of Us stitched together. There's very few moments where they have to do traversal. And all of The Last of Us is traversing places, basically, while trying to get through enemies.
Maneuvering through obstacles.
Right? This is the opposite of that. This is where they are given individual encounters and have to resolve those encounters. And the writers have captured that in a believable way, where both the transformations of the characters and the eventual progression of lethality of the bad guys also is believable, like at a commensurate rate.
You know, it's interesting because to that point, I've been seeing this interesting discussion on social media where, because it's based on a game and people love this game, people want to talk about it in the context of the game in a lot of cases. And, so there's a lot of people like speculating on the stats of these characters in the game. I think somebody shared the Fallout or whatever the mobile game is. The one where you're
the Vault Dwellers.
The Vault Dwellers one. Like, because there's actual stats for them in that because they've been added in. But one of the things I thought was really interesting was one of the conversations with what level these characters would be.
Some people tracking it.
Level 1. And the overwhelming consensus is that they're leveling incredibly slowly because you're not seeing a ton of combat. And that's where you get experience in these games from, right? So,
a lot of quest experience in these games, too. They've completed quite a few quests. There's a lot of quests.
But they're all pissant side quests.
They complete. I would say that it's a main quest line when they go to the village and they have the 3-way fight. It's a main quest line when they recover the head. It's a main Super Duper Mark is definitely a main quest line because you had to find the drugs to keep Cooper going. I think these are all main quests.
If it's not like The House Always Wins where you got 5-6 parts to it, it doesn't count.
That's fair enough. It's fair enough. I think we're through the act 1 of a Fallout story.
Yeah.
By the time we get through Super Duper Mart, right, where the characters have now developed and they've all encountered each other and there's meaningful growth happening. But I guess to my point, what I'm saying is part of Fallout is about the map getting bigger.
Yeah.
Right. So what happens is your map is very small in the beginning. You don't know anything about the world and you're discovering it, but you can't go very far in the beginning because you're not powerful enough to do it. This show is handling that idea of the map opening up and showing us more and bigger things as we go while the characters expand. Right. So now Maximus has power armor. So now he can go further places and fight bigger things.
Right.
Now Lucy has her eyes opened. Right. So the fact that she is kind of badass becomes more real because she's willing to use lethal force and her brains and her wits to like encounter things. The fact that Cooper has a weakness, although he's basically this like omnipotent super character in the beginning, but the fact that he's like revealed to have a weakness he's constantly managing.
Yeah.
All of these things open the world and the story up more. So 3 and 4 matured that for me. And I think I enjoyed them so much because that felt the most Fallout, not just like mechanically as a game, but because the discovery of things is to me the joy of Fallout, the emergence of the world and the storyline. And maybe it's back to your thing with pacing where I think they're handling that really well and they're handling it in a very Fallout-y way.
Yeah.
So it felt really good for me too. So I like both of these. Although my biggest scene, I think, of the 2 of them, and I'm gonna not count the Vault Boy reveal scene with Walt and the thumb because that's iconic. Like I think that's
iconic,
too big a thing.
It's tons of fun, but it's not something that's driving the narrative of this story forward. Much.
Whereas the Cooper Lucy finger biting scene and the showdown between Thaddeus and Maximus where he reveals himself and they have the fight and his foot gets stomped on. Those 2 scenes to me, I think, were my 2 standouts from this whole thing. There's lots of cool fight set pieces with Mr. Handy. The practical effects are incredible, but like those 2 character development scenes, I think, were the things that made both these so like memorable to me. Do you have anything that stood up for you?
Well, like I said, I mean, I've already mentioned it before, but like the scene with the water, because it's such an important character development piece for both those characters.
Sure.
So that was huge to me. For me as a Fallout fan, just the payoff of her interacting with the Mr. Handy and it feeling so like good. The Mr. Handy from the Bethesda era Fallout games. Those were the big payoffs for me. I love the fact they're all going their separate ways at the end. I love the fact that as they go their separate ways, Lucy is the only one who still feels like she has a real purpose. like Maximus feels a little bit lost because one, he's just trapped in this suit. Like who knows what's going to happen, right? But the other thing is, does he go after Thaddeus because he needs the head to redeem himself with the Brotherhood? Or does Thaddeus have too much of a head start? Does he need to now be fleeing from the Brotherhood?
Right.
So Coop has lost the head, but he's finally got some medicine, maybe more soon. Who knows?
Who knows? Well, yeah. There's some in there, obviously.
Yes. Yeah. So they could like. It feels like even though you know the three characters are the main characters and as an ensemble cast, Lucy is the one where you can kind of see what she's doing next, and the other two, it's very up in the air. So, yeah, I mean, like
they've all got their own hooks in the same thing, though, right? Maximus wants to become a knight, so he's trying to get this head back to base. Lucy wants to get her dad back, so she's trying to get this head to the person that's going to give her dad back. Cooper wants the head because apparently it's worth tons of money. Like, they all have their own reasons to be invested in this quest, and they're all at odds because where the head goes becomes different for each of them. And so that's why they're kind of like sometimes cooperating, sometimes not cooperating, sometimes hostage to each other. And they're all lying and hiding shit from each other, which is very funny because there are three main protagonists and we kind of assume they're all going to come together at some point.
Yeah.
Sweet. Let's go to the chat and see real quick if anybody has any questions and what's going on and what the comments are. Still waiting for the Tangents and Memes podcast called Deep Cutting the 80s, was what Atragon X just said. Ewan said, American Gothic was quality entertainment. Gary Cole was nicely smooth and creepy, and Lucas Black held up his end very well.
Gary Cole in that, my favorite scene in the history of television is in that show when he goes in the first episode down into the prison cells, the jail cells, to friggin' murder the main character's dad, and he's whistling the theme song to the Andy Griffith Show.
That is a great scene. Is he the devil in that one? I think he's the devil. That's right. Yeah, he's the devil, and he's the sheriff of the town.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fucking great show.
So good.
Brian Grant says, new setup looks better than I was expecting. What'd you expect? Okay, Jesus.
To be fair, like right behind me, there's just a rubble pile. So,
yeah, it's all green screen. We're actually sitting in the parking lot right now. Brian Sheen says, there's no mistaking Matt Berry's voice. It's true. The Mr. Handy voice is iconic, and I'm so glad. And it's so smart to use the people from the game in this way, especially for recognizable things like Mr. Handy, Protectrons, like any of that stuff. They should absolutely be using the voice actors from that show. So Fallout, great show and well-timed for the Fallout Factions release too. Yeah, I have to say that I am so pumped for Fallout Factions after watching this show. I'm really excited for that game.
I'm stoked about Fallout Factions, but I've actually kind of been going in the opposite direction, which is I've finally gone back to Fallout Wasteland Warfare.
Yeah.
And
doing all the solo stuff.
I'm sifting my way through all the counters and all the solo encounters.
That's awesome. And then also got Brian Sheen says, every time you say Cooper, I think you're talking about Kyle MacLachlan. That's true. Yeah. That's a Twin Peaks reference, but okay. That makes sense.
Both and neither?
Both and neither. Yeah, it can be both. It's funny because Kyle MacLachlan both is and isn't in this a lot, right? Because he's in the very beginning. They kind of flash to him every now and again, and we see this there's a scene where we see a very youngified version of him that freaks me out.
Later on,
they deep fake him to be super young.
It's interesting, right? Because he occupies again the way they've done such a great job of making it feel like the games without being one of the stories from the games. Narratively, he occupies not just because he's the father, but he occupies a very similar place in the narrative to Liam Neeson in Fallout 3.
You're not wrong, yeah.
Because he's heavily involved in the start, he'll be involved at the end. But everything in between, he's just kind of this presence that overhangs it without actually being right there.
You're following his notes. You're following the breadcrumbs, basically, he's left behind. Yeah, you're right. Brian Sheen says, every time you say, the lack of volume CGI feels more wholesome in production, is what Nick Butler just said. 100%. I would say that, the prop budget for this show must have been insane.
Yeah.
But, one of the things they've absolutely nailed is the practical sets and the practical effects.
I think even if you don't like Fallout and you don't like this show for whatever reason, I think a lot of technical aspects of this show really should be held up as an example for how television and movies should be made. The scripting, the dialogue, the direction, the pacing, the effects. It's just from an operational side of things, it's just super well executed.
Yeah. And with care. And honestly, that's, I think, when we look at things like The Boys and these other sort of high-end Amazon shows, that is something that production studio is getting very right. You know what I mean? They're getting people involved who know the IP and the properties.
But this feels very much even if you don't like the genre, the IP, the whatever, like whatever your favorite thing is, like if you like rom-coms, if you like, you know, family movies, whatever, like it feels like just looking at this and thinking this is the technical way all these things should be done, it still feels true to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Sweet. Well, we'll be back with episodes 5 and 6. It gets
those are the numbers that come after.
Those come after 3 and 4. This is 3 and 4. And I hope you guys enjoyed this like recap and review of the Fallout TV show. Apparently, the last comment I will read is apparently there are stats for Fallout factions on the MODIPHIUS website for all the TV show characters.
In
the assembly guide on the Fallout factions.
Yeah, is it the factions or is it the Wasteland Warfare stats?
The rule stats for the show characters are in the assembly guide on the Fallout factions download page. So it must be for factions.
Oh wait, why am I asking this? This is my phone.
I don't know. Yeah, your phone's right there. I'm just reading the chat.
No, I mean like the assembly instructions are on my phone.
Oh, they're on your phone. You can check them out. Maybe they're just on the back there. Yeah. So, yeah, and we'll keep this up for 5 and 6. It gets very real in 5 and 6. They are, again, with pacing. This is like we've gotten to like our second act now, right? The call to action is done, and the characters have kind of like come into their power each. And so now we have like in 5 and 6, we cross the streams again, and people who were linked up before or weren't linked up before become linked up. And like, we have like a new sort of like pairing, which I think is really cool because it changes the dynamic.
I think one of the things we should do too is like, obviously the format we're shooting where there's 8 episodes of the show, we're doing 2 per episode. We're going to shoot 4 of these. I think we should actually do at least a 5th, speculating on what
season 2, 100%. Absolutely. Yeah. Tell us in the comments what you think about the actual format too, because this is our first time doing this. Yeah. And we'll reuse this format for other things too, like when we go to see the movies and stuff like that.
Well, we won't.
When you finally see Civil War, we need to finally actually get you to watch Civil War so we can do a recap of Civil War. There's a bunch of things we need to do. Like
I saw it. I thought the fight scene between War Machine and Hawkeye was great.
Wrong Civil War.
Oh, okay.
Different Civil War. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye, everybody.